Hi, my name is Lieu Pham, and I'm the VP of Global Strategy here at studioID. Welcome to the very first episode of our new marketing series, Into the Funnel.
And I'm Travis Gonzalez, the Strategy Director here at studioID. In each episode, we'll explore some of the big questions impacting marketers' day-to-day experiences and walk through some perspectives on those challenges, with the help from a few special guests along the way.
For our very first topic, we're tackling a question at the heart of every marketer's mandate. How do you drive long-term sustainable growth in marketing? And to help us unpack this very complex topic, we've invited our colleague, Robin Ray, the VP of Marketing at our parent company, IndustryDive.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Robin's role is really interesting because it straddles the world between marketing and publishing. Not only is she launching new publications and fostering audience growth, she's also creating a space where advertisers can connect to really compelling demand gen opportunities. So really excited, Robin, to have you on as our first guest and to offer you your perspective on the publishing world.
It's no secret that marketers are facing tremendous pressure when it comes to delivering results and improving our ROI. But this is resulting in a lot of marketers choosing a lot of short-term tactics at the expense of actually formulating a long-term strategy. Instead, we should be balancing both short-term and long-term growth strategies and focusing on strong creative, consistent communications, and quality above all else.
Yeah, Lil, quality over quantity is something we talk about a lot at IndustryDive. And it's really easy to get swept up in volume metrics when it comes to content and leads. But that short-term noise can really distract you from your mission, your bigger picture, your longer-term goals, and really prevents you from doing the work to build trust with the right audience.
Yeah, I think especially on the content side, that element of wanting to go viral has really taken over the industry, and it's made people really afraid to take long calculated risks, right? Especially with the advent of digital ad spend. If you can get 1,000 page views and impressions on a piece of content and kind of manufacture that audience, you're going to go for that first rather than, maybe take the long way, which is a little bit scarier, but will have you see more sustainable results in the long run.
So there's a bit of a waterfall effect, right? Limited understanding of ROI leads to really poor marketing decisions, and poor marketing decisions lead to mediocre marketing. And we know mediocre marketing really chips away at audience trust. So what we really need to do is focus on the quality part of the equation, thinking about our audience. Are we really engaging with them in a meaningful way? Have we built trust?
That's so true, Lil. Trust is really the currency you need in order to establish a loyal audience, and it's what you need to grow a relationship with the right audience. But it requires patience, and we've seen on our side some of that more blatant kind of ROI motivated content. Watch a demo, buy this service. That type of content can flounder when it's put in front of our high value audience at the wrong time. And so I really encourage marketers to think like a reporter. Start with the facts, the story, the background, add your analysis or your brand point of view, and then grow to become credible as a thought leader. And then walk, don't run, your users through that conversion funnel.
I really resonate with that, especially what you said, Robin, around kind of thinking like a journalist. And I think a big part of that is you don't always know who your audience is when you're first creating those marketing assets. And I think a lot of us in the industry tend to think of marketing as an end-all be-all, when in reality, it's an experiment, right? You want to use it to test certain assumptions about that audience and kind of see how they play out over time. But then at the same time, if you don't get the results you want immediately, don't change direction, absolutely, because you're undoing some of that work that you're going about producing.
And actually, to piggyback off of that, Travis, I think sometimes when you change tactics and change content too much, you also erode the trust of the user and of the reader because they come to expect something. And when you break up that consistent voice, that's when they start to question, should they trust you on that piece of topic?
That's a great point, Robin. Consistency is so underrated, and When we're delivering content marketing strategies to our clients, we're always asking them and challenging them to actually focus on a particular area. Like what is that one key conversation they could own and really double down on, rather than trying to cover so much. So don't think about marketing in binary terms. Think about it as an integrated practice. You need both short-term and long-term growth strategies. You need both sales activations and brand building. You need that Super Bowl ad and that promotional offer. It needs to be done in an integrated, holistic way, and we call this brand demand marketing.
Yeah, and it's about really finding the right audience at the right time. You might have thousands, maybe millions of target users or customers you want to reach, and how in the world can you meet them all with the exact content that they want and need at the right time? And so that's where I think the brand demand approach really comes into play. And so what that might look like for us is, we have a really high level trends piece, establishing our brand voice and our POV. At the same time, we are offering our return visitors an option to subscribe to our daily or weekly newsletters to get our point of view in their inbox. And then we are sharing gated or lead generating content to our most loyal audience members. And throughout all of this, we're listening, we're measuring, and of course, we're optimizing along the way.
Robin, you mentioned the right audience a few times. How do you know you've reached the right audience as a marketer?
Well, first you have to define what is the right audience for you. And at Industry Dive, we really try to go after decision makers in industries that are rife with capital, with change, and with competition. That means they need information to help them in their everyday careers. And then once we've defined them, we need to learn about them. And we actually have a dedicated audience team that does research into the challenges and opportunities that these decision makers are needing to learn about every day. The audience research can range from picking up the phone and calling a leading decision maker in an industry and asking them one-on-one what concerns them, what keeps them up at night. It also ranges from feedback emails, actual outreach to readers who are repeatedly coming back to our sites, to also reader surveys where we actually can get benchmarks about how we're doing, and again, the challenges that they are facing. And we do this constantly.
I think brand demand really does the work of getting you out of the cycle of mentioning your products over and over again. It really puts the focus back on the audience. It's really all about what are the problems you're trying to solve for that audience through a piece of marketing, predominantly through a piece of content marketing, at least in our case. How are you doing that to help them first be aware of the problem, things that are kind of current in their industry? Then how do you associate that with your brand? How do you create meaningful connections with the content they're reading, the brand that you represent, and eventually the products that you're trying to offer them? And as you bring your audience further into the funnel, you can really start to make that product connection and make those values become more apparent when the time is right.
B2B professionals are looking for trusted sources of information, whether that's an expert, person, a publication, or a resource, to help them be at the top of their game and to really succeed in their career. And so, what we say to brands today is it's not good enough to just build awareness and drive demand of your products and services. You need to do everything in your power to actually help your audience, whether they're a prospect or whether they're a customer, to be wildly successful at their jobs.
Yeah, and as a publisher, every day on our side is dedicated to giving our audience the information that they need to make those meaningful decisions in their career, whether that's from our journalists or from our industry partners in brands. At our core, serving our audience is the prime mission that we're on. And we know that by doing this, even above driving ROI, we'll sustain long-term growth as a business. It's honestly this dedication that's helped us build a loyal audience of millions of decision makers that stick with us year after year. We put them first.
Yeah, so it sounds fairly counterintuitive, but brand demand is not always equal in terms of investment of 50% to brand, 50% to demand. It really depends on your competitive situation and your business goals. So, for example, if you're a new brand trying to launch a new product and service into the market, you may want to tilt the scales in favor of brand building because you do need to invest a lot in terms of creating awareness for your product and your service, but you still need to do a lot of demand activities, sales activities. The point is that you need to do both. You need to do it in an integrated way, and you also need to make sure that you're always evaluating and being purposeful with that investment.
I think even before diving into content there or marketing in general, there is a need to really understand the market you're in, what your competitors are doing, what are their points of view in the space, especially if you're a new brand and you're competing in a category that's been there for a long time. Like say you are like a really niche, like condiment item and you're competing with like a major brand that's like selling ketchup or mustard. You can't just go out and start creating content and expect people to visit you. You have to give your point of view on that condiment, on why your ketchup solves some larger problem or larger need, and then really hone in on that audience you're trying to build. And that really starts in the research phase of understanding that sweet spot of your marketing voice and your content voice. We spent a lot of this conversation so far talking about building trust with audience, kind of finding that sweet spot with content. And Robin, to ping it back to you a little, one publication that comes to mind for me very often is Retail Dive. And with Retail Dive in particular, it's been around for so long. It's competing with so many other different publications for the same information. How are you maintaining that audience? How are you finding that distinct point of view and keeping it going?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there that there are a lot of publications, both specifically dedicated to retail and then also broader general business, journalism and even, USA Today might cover retail and what's happening there. So we have a lot of voices in the space, but it goes back to knowing who we're writing for. It's not necessarily an investor who's interested in keeping up with mergers and acquisitions or a brand launch. We are really writing for those heads of product at a large, Fortune 100 company, or someone who's in charge of the supply chain at Target and so forth. So keeping that in mind, that's what's driving our journalists when they put together their editorial strategy the beginning of the year. And of course, they revisit it throughout the year. But just like marketers are dedicating time to setting a content strategy, our newsroom is thinking about what are the topics that are important to that target audience, to those heads of products, to that head of the supply chain who's going to be making decisions with this information. They have to keep them in mind. And as you said, we've been around for a decade and we've got folks who've been covering that beat for even longer. So they have a point of view that we try to weave throughout any of the follow-up stories and stay true to that. And again, we're honoring the reader's expectations. That's what they come to know from us, and that's what we deliver.
That's great. I really love the idea of an editorial beat and an area where the journalist goes really deep. On the marketer side, the first thing that comes to mind for me when we talk about editorial beats are content pillars. It's not too dissimilar where you're finding a selection of maybe 3 to 4 broad thematic areas that your brand can really go deep into and really drive that knowledge journey that Lil was talking about. So even though you're feeling the pressure to be like the competitor, especially from the marketing side, you know what works for your audience.
Well, it's what audiences expect, right? They want communications to be consistent and they want those communications to be meaningful. And that's what brand demand offers. It delivers on that promise. Remember that we're being compared to the best of the best now, not just the best in category. So it's really important to think about the bar being set really high and really trying to deliver on your promise as a brand.
And to add to that, Lil, think about just how much competition is out there today. Audiences are getting hit with messaging and marketing messages on all sides, and it can be overwhelming. And so I think a brand to demand really asks you to dedicate yourself to the audience value, to your story, and that's how Industry Dive has achieved a really loyal audience, and we have seen a lot of success on the publisher side.
Audiences are going to know if you're not being authentic, if you're not showing up to help them meet their solutions and like find needs and talk about what they care about in their day-to-day professional and personal lives even. And so marketers need to use branded demand to shift the conversation back towards that audience-centric model.
Right. I think these are really great points to have at the forefront of your mind, because we get so distracted by performance and ROI and all these other priorities that we're running really fast. So we really need to think about accelerating what we're doing in the marketing front and thinking about audiences first and foremost. And I think branded demand does a really good job at helping us, stay true to our North Star.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have today for diving into this question. Thanks so much, Robin, for being our first guest and shedding some light on a publisher's perspective and how it might be relevant to marketers.
Thanks so much for having me. It was an honor to be your first guest.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everyone else watching, be sure to watch this space as we continue to dive into some more questions marketers are facing and hopefully dive into how we can solve those challenges, come up with exciting solutions.
Yes, and you can continue the conversation with us on all the usual social channels. That is officially a wrap for us. Thank you so much for joining us on our very first episode of Into the Funnel. See you next time.